Have you ever, thought about like a Disney villain, but like in real life? Someone who, seems charming, but really they've got like a ton of power.
Oh, yeah.
Well, today we are going to be diving deep into the story of Kim Yo-jong. She is the sister of North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un.
Right.
Got a whole bunch of articles and research and stuff.
Yeah.
And trust me, you would be surprised how relevant this is, even if you're not really into international politics or whatever.
It's true.
We're going to be talking about power dynamics and propaganda, and you know how one person can have like incredible influence behind the scenes.
That's exactly right. And, her story's full of twists and turns. It starts with a childhood that's like incredibly privileged, but also strangely isolated.
Okay, so picture this. It's like the mid-90s, Disneyland, Paris. Two kids are having a blast, just like any other kids would.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. These kids are Kim Jong-il's children.
Right.
Living a double life under aliases. They're supposedly the children of diplomats.
Wow.
But really, they're North Korean royalty.
That's crazy. So this Disneyland trip, it's like a fascinating glimpse into their early years, It shows the lengths that the regime went to shield them from the world, but even while giving them a taste of like normalcy.
Yeah, and it gets even more intriguing. After Disneyland, they're whisked off to Switzerland.
Oh, wow.
For private schooling. They're living under assumed names, blending in with other kids who have no idea who they really are.
Yeah.
It's like straight out of a spy novel or something.
Absolutely. Imagine being exposed to Western culture, experiencing a level of freedom and anonymity that's like unheard of in North Korea.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're pulled back.
Right.
No goodbyes. Just a swift return to the isolation of the regime.
That abrupt shift back to North Korea.
Yeah.
That has to leave a mark on you, doesn't it?
Of course.
You have to wonder how that experience kind of shaped Kim Yo-jong's worldview.
Yeah, it's hard to say for sure, but that experience, along with the constant pressure of being part of the Kim dynasty,
Right.
undoubtedly played a role in shaping her path.
And that path leads her right into the heart of the North Korean power structure. After her brother Kim Jong-un takes over, she's always by his side, but initially she's very much in the background.
Exactly. She's almost like a shadow, always present but rarely speaking. You see her carrying clipboards, holding ashtrays for her brother, always observant, always learning.
So she's not making waves, but she's definitely in a position of trust. Right.
Without a doubt. And that trust translates into power. In 2014, she becomes first deputy director of the Propaganda and Agitation Department.
Wow.
This is huge. This department essentially controls reality within North Korea.
Wow. So she goes from carrying clipboards to like shaping the narrative of an entire nation. That's a pretty meteoric rise.
It is, and it shows how quickly she gained influence. And her rise doesn't stop there. By 2017, she joins the Politburo, the top decision-making body in North Korea. Now she's officially part of the inner circle.
And then the world really gets to see her for the first time at the 2018 Winter Olympics in South Korea.
Right.
What was the strategy there?
The Olympics provided a golden opportunity to present a softer, more diplomatic image of North Korea.
Right.
Kim Jong-un was still seen as unpredictable and aggressive, but Kim Yo-jong, she was charming, approachable. She even smiled for the cameras.
Right.
It was a calculated move to reshape global perception.
Yeah, it was like for a minute it seemed like North Korea was ready to like open up, to engage in like real dialogue.
Exactly. Kim Yo-jong's performance at the Olympics, it really shifted the narrative.
Yeah.
But then things took a turn.
You're right. Her tone, like it became way more aggressive, way more confrontational.
Yeah.
It was like a different person was speaking.
Think about those sources that you shared. Like she starts using really harsh language,
Yeah.
like referring to Ukraine and South Korea as vicious dogs.
Yeah.
And then there were those statements about sanctions.
Right.
She basically said that sanctions would only make them stronger,
Yeah, and we can't forget about that whole thing with the leaflets. South Korean activists were sending leaflets that were like critical of the North Korean regime across the border.
Right.
And the North's response, allegedly orchestrated by Kim Yo-jong,
Yeah.
was to send back trucks full of garbage and feces.
Oh.
It was like a pretty shocking escalation.
It certainly like shattered the image of the diplomatic smiling Kim Yo-jong that we saw at the Olympics.
Totally.
So the question is like, what caused this shift? Was this like calculated, or did something change within the regime itself?
What's your take on this? Was she always this hard line and the charm was just like a temporary tactic, or is there something else going on here?
I think it's like a mix of factors, you know? Remember, we're talking about a regime that feels constantly threatened,
Right.
that sees the world in like very black and white terms, you know? Us versus them.
Yeah.
Any like perceived slight against the regime or any attempt to undermine their authority, it's met with fierce resistance.
So even if, like, we in the outside world see those leaflets as a form of free speech,
Right.
however provocative, you know,
Yeah.
from the North Korean perspective, it's like an act of aggression.
Exactly. And Kim Yo-jong, through her like increasingly aggressive rhetoric,
Yeah.
she's signaling that North Korea will not back down. They will respond forcefully to any perceived threats.
This is where it gets really interesting for me.
Yeah.
Because it forces us to try and understand the North Korean perspective, even if we don't agree with it, you know,
Sure.
to kind of put ourselves in their shoes.
I totally agree. It's easy to write off North Korea as like irrational or unpredictable.
Yeah.
But if we want to have any hope of like engaging with them,
Right.
of finding a way towards peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula,
Right.
we have to understand their motivations, their fears, their worldview.
It's a reminder that, like, international relations are so complex
No.
that there's always more than meets the eye.
Right. And speaking of complexity, there's another layer to this story that we need to talk about.
Okay.
The future of the Kim dynasty.
Yes, the question of succession. Kim Jong-un's health has been the subject of speculation for years.
Yeah.
And the recent introduction of his daughter, Kim Joo-ae, to the public has only added fuel to the fire.
It's a fascinating development, isn't it? North Korea is a deeply patriarchal society.
Right.
The idea of a woman leading the country would have been unthinkable just a few years ago.
But now we have Kim Yo-jong, who has already proven herself to be a powerful and influential figure.
Right.
She's got the experience, the ruthlessness,
Yeah.
the understanding of how power works in that system.
And she's shown that she's willing to use both charm and aggression to get what she wants.
Yeah.
She's a complex and formidable figure.
Totally.
So what happens if Kim Jong-un is no longer able to rule?
Right.
Does Kim Yo-jong step in? Does she face challenges from within the regime? Does the dynasty fall apart?
These are huge questions.
Yeah.
And the answers will have, like, massive implications, not just for North Korea, but for the whole region.
Absolutely.
It makes you wonder, like, what kind of leader she would be.
Would she continue down the same path as her brother? Or would she do things her own way?
Right.
Would she keep North Korea isolated, or would she try to open it up to the world? These are questions that experts are thinking about right now.
I think this is a good place to pause for now.
Mm.
Yeah. It's, like, mind-blowing to think about, you know, the future of a whole country.
Right.
And, like, maybe the stability of a whole region could rest on, like, one person's shoulders.
Yeah. It really highlights how, like, individual personalities can shape, you know, global events.
Right.
We often focus on the big picture stuff like geopolitics or economic trends.
Yeah.
But sometimes it all comes down to the choices and actions of specific people.
And Kim Yo-jong is, like, a perfect example of that.
Absolutely.
She's gone from this, like, mysterious figure in the background
Right.
to someone who's, like, commanding attention on the world stage.
And remember, it wasn't that long ago that she was basically unknown outside of North Korea.
Yeah.
And now she's considered like one of the most powerful women in the world. Someone who could potentially lead a country with nuclear weapons.
We talked about her Disneyland trip,
Yeah.
her Swiss schooling,
Yeah.
you know, her early role as, like, a quiet observer,
Right.
her rise through the ranks of the North Korean power structure,
Yeah.
and then that, like, dramatic shift from charm diplomacy to that, like, fiery rhetoric.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has. And it's a journey that's far from over.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we've gone through the sources that you shared,
Right.
but there are still, like, so many questions that we don't have answers to.
Absolutely.
Like, what kind of leader would she even be if she took over?
Right.
Would she keep that iron grip of the Kim dynasty?
Yeah.
Or could she be the one to finally, you know, bring change to North Korea?
It's almost impossible to predict.
Yeah.
I mean, she's shown that she's both capable and ruthless.
Right.
She understands how power works, but she also seems like she's willing to challenge the way things are.
Exactly. She's a wild card.
Yeah.
And that makes her both interesting and potentially dangerous.
Hmm.
You know, think about what's at stake here.
Right.
North Korea has nukes,
Yeah.
and Kim Yo-jong has shown that she's not afraid to threaten her neighbors and the West.
The possibility of things going wrong, you know, of escalation, that's a real concern.
Totally. This isn't just some political drama happening on the other side of the world, you know.
Right.
This has the potential to affect us all.
You got it. A Kim Yo-jong story is a reminder that we're all connected, that
Yeah.
what happens in one part of the world can have ripple effects everywhere.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive, I'm left feeling kind of, like, awestruck, to be honest. Kim Yo-jong's rise to power, her mastery of propaganda, the different sides of her personality, it's all super compelling.
And her story is far from over. It'll be fascinating to see how she handles the challenges ahead and what kind of impact she'll ultimately have on North Korea and the world.
This deep dive has only scratched the surface.
Yeah.
We encourage you to check out these sources for yourself to learn more about North Korea, its people, and all the complicated stuff going on over there.
And if you're into stories about power and propaganda and the people who shape history, let us know.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear what you think and what other topics you want us to dive into. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the mysterious world of Kim Yo-jong.